Goeiedag, welcome. My name is Amadeus and today I will do a short wrap up of all the books I DNF'd in 2017 with the reasons why. Because I think that it is quite interesting to see what someone's opinions are on a book they did not finish, or maybe why they did not finish it, because it can have so many different reasons. And we start with an ebook. I actually won in a giveaway. It's this one. It's called Amongst the Killing and written by Joe Compton. I won it in a giveaway of J.D. Estrada. And it's a crime thriller written from two perspectives. One is the serial killer that needs to be found, and one is the police agent who is looking for him. And then you get the two perspectives, which creates some tension because sometimes they are extremely similar and sometimes they are not. And the whole thing it was filled with tension in the beginning, and it had some stuff going on in the writing style that I did not really enjoy, like missing words or repeated words. And that does not sit well in my head, so in the end, especially when I started caring less and less for the characters and I did not really care about how it ended anymore, I just decided to stop reading, because otherwise it seems like quite a time waste to me. Then we go to my physical books, some of which I will probably unhaul or sell or whatever, some of which I will keep. The first one is Hunted. This is the first book I got in a book box I tried out, called Magic Chest. So, first things first, I got this book and it was promised as it would not be a YA, because the theme was Huntress and the Beast. So I suspected this book would be in it, but when the curator said that it would not be a YA book, I thought, well, okay, then I can buy it because I'm not really interested in Hunted. And then when I read it, I almost fell asleep of boredom. This Beauty and the Beast retelling totally destroys the character that Belle was, because instead of being bookish, this character likes hunting. And as a vegan, this is even more of a disgusting twist to give on the character, because I don't think that loving hunting makes a female badass. It makes her primal, and especially when it is not needed to hunt so much, it's quite actually sick. Plus I did not like the writing style. Nothing was really happening in the story, and then some kind of strange insta-love type thing happened at a moment where I stopped, and insta-love is one of my most hated tropes in books and any kind of medium. So I DNF'd this. And this is the first book I did that with on purpose, so it was a little bit harder for me to do it. Then we go on with Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, an author valued for her beautiful, whimsical writing, which I don't like. It is so flowery and so wordy that the story becomes incredibly slow, and not only did the plot development go very, very slowly, nothing was really happening. It was just an introspective story of the characters, which I don't normally mind a lot of, but there was supposed to be a lot happening. It feels like there is stuff missing, and I tabbed this for like beautiful moments. I think I used, I don't know which color anymore, but there is a 4 or 5 pink tabs, which in this book I used to mark the no-goes in writing for me, like sentences that felt incomplete or similes that don't make any sense or don't even need to be there. There is some instances of beautiful writing in here, but all in all, after 200 pages, when nothing was still happening and I still wasn't got sucked out of it more and more and could concentrate less and less well on the book, I thought, well, it's time to just put it away and go on with the next book, because this seems like a time waste. And all of the other books, including the Joe Compton book, I DNF'd in December, and some of them I left bookmarks in because maybe a time will come when I am suddenly in the mood for them and I do want to finish them or read them again. And that wasn't necessary. I marked a page in this one, but by folding the edge, dog earring. This is What-the-Dickens by Gregory Maguire. I completely love his writing style, but this book was so slow and I was not in the mood for it. It's a story about a rogue tooth fairy that does not know he is a tooth fairy, and it has some kind of a different name. Like, I could not focus on this at all. I was not in the mood for it. And even though the writing style was okay, the atmosphere was also a little bit lacking. And I read the part I did read until page, I think, 72. I did read it quicker than normal because it is written in a style that I find relatively easy to read. I think I read it in 1.5 hours, and normally I only read like 30 pages an hour, so that says something. So I put it aside, and when I feel in the mood for it, I think I might try and finish this one. Then we get This Mortal Coil by Emily Suvada, which is a relatively new release in the YA section. It's a sci-fi based in genetics, or at least that is what it is sold as and what Emily Suvada says in her author's note. But 80% or so of all the stuff that's based in genetics in this book is either now impossible, but I can look through it because it's supposed to be a sci-fi, or just impossible, like genetic modification by putting in extra genetic code in the cell, which for some reason, why would that DNA not get eaten away? It needs to be inserted directly in the chromosome for it to work. Otherwise it's not divided up or copied when the cell divides. It also has severe holes in immunology, physiology, and virology, which are very, very important in the world building. Like, our main character is allergic for the nanites, or the little bot type thingies that create the genetic changes, but somehow her father was like the master scientist behind it, and they have not made hypoallergenic ones. Why exactly? His daughter probably was not the first person who was allergic for those things. Or, in another note, why isn't she allergic for the thing that would distribute those little machines exactly? Because I will bet you that it would be mostly made with similar or the same materials. Why doesn't the immune system fight the virus? Or at least that's the idea I got, even though the body gets a fever, which is an indicative of the immune system getting turned on, so to speak. But for some reason the virus can make like its own proteins, which is not how a virus works. It needs to get into the cell to get proteins from its DNA made. So technically the immunity is based on you would not get infected, even though the virus needs to get into your bloodstream, which technically is sepsis, one of the most severe forms of infection you can have. And a virus is a lifeless organism in a way that it needs to infect the cell and get to the apoptose in any infected cell to get DNA replicated and proteins made. I mean, there is more holes in the world building. If those holes would be mended, I think you would be up here in the book and there would not be room for the plot anymore. I had such a feeling like, why would you mess up all this stuff we do know when there is so much more that we actually do not know? that people are still looking for and don't understand. Why would you mess up the stuff we do understand? There is so much stuff that biologically isn't solid in here. I don't like it. Now I'll get to a little bit more of a lighter note. Start with Out of Oz by Gregory Maguire, yet another Gregory Maguire book. Again, like in What-the-Dickens, I really like his writing style, and I like this book. This story, in which it was at page 175, more than its predecessor, A Lion Among Men, because nothing happens in that book. It's so boring. But the progression in here it's whimsically written because part of it is the perspective of like an 11-year-old, and that is actually my favorite parts in here, but I could not get into it for the third time in a row. So I thought, well, now let's set it as permanently as possible on the side. I might get back to it later because, I mean, I remember pretty well what happened in here, or at least enough to start and read on, because it's part 4 in a series. So, and then the last one we have Anthony Doerr's All the Light We Cannot See, in which I ended up at page 32, which is also not fun. Normally I give it between 50 and 100 pages before I decide to DNF a book, and usually that means that I'll read on because I like it enough or am in it enough that I will go on. But this book has such a dull writing style, I almost fell asleep and I could not concentrate on it for longer than like 5 minutes. I read maybe 3 pages in 20 minutes, which is incredibly slow, and I did not retain any of the information of it. So I gave it like 3 pages and then I was like, well, even though I can see beautiful metaphors and a beautiful storyline and nice characters appearing, it has been enough. Well, I give it more than 3 pages, I give it like 20 pages or so, because I was at page 10 before. But then I had why would I keep on reading something that goes so slow and does not satisfy my brain at all? At least not now. All those poor children that need to read this for school. The boy character was part of the time not that interesting to me, and then the girl character became less interesting as well. Like, the characters that are written down are actually relatively interesting. The plot is interesting enough. The world is it's a historical world, so I have kind of an idea of what it might have looked like, because it does take place in World War II. It was kind of interesting, and there is even a like magical realism type story going on with one stone or something that has magical powers. That was interesting as well. It is solely based on a writing style, which is one of the most important things for me in a book. But but shown with Gregory Maguire, if the writing style is beautiful but nothing happens, I'll still put it away. But if the writing style is dull and I almost fall asleep, I can't concentrate and constantly think about other things, that would be the first reason for me to put away a book. Anywho, now after this negative video, thank you for watching. I will hopefully bring you a more positive one about favorites, or maybe what I want to read in 2018 soon. Thank you for watching, en tot de keer!